Right, now data from the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2022 has also shown that the county of Samburu tops the list with the highest number of teen pregnancies. West Pokot County followed at 36%, with Marsabit County at third place on 29%. The report further indicates that a collaborative approach and commitment is needed for partners to succeed in the fight against teen pregnancies in the country. Rose Ongoi has more.
In Kenya, about 1 in every 5 teenage girls between 15 and 19 years have either had a live birth or are pregnant with their first child, according to the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey. With the average percentage of teenage pregnancies in Kenya standing at 15%, Samburu County records a disturbingly higher account of 50% of teen pregnancies. West Pokot County ranks second with a prevalence rate of 36%, followed by Marsabit at 29%, Narok County at 28% and Meru at 24%. Nyeri and Nyandarua counties have the lowest at 5% respectively.
We do note a major issue in terms of teenage pregnancies, which remain stubbornly high, with a marginal decrease to 15%, and this is dropping from 18% in 2014 when the last demographic health survey was done. Need high-level multi-sectoral interventions or collaborations to be implemented with urgency to address this issue in order for the country to reap economic development and growth.
In Samburu County, situations such as socio-economic hardships and outdated cultural practices such as female genital mutilation, early forced marriages and the bidding culture were the major contributing factors in the rise of teenage pregnancies. Statistics from the Samburu County's Health Department show that 832 teenagers became pregnant between January and March 2022, and health officials fear that the number will skyrocket by the end of the year if nothing is done.
Sisi kama watumishi wa Mungu tutahitaji tuamke tukiwa hapa kwa kaunti ya Samburu na hata pia Kenya mzima, ili tuweze kujulisha watoto wetu, kuwapatia mwelekeo, tusije tukawaache tu mambo kama yatokee, itaadhiri taifa yetu.
Kuwe na curriculum ni jambo la maana sana, ndio mwanafunzi mtoto aanze kufundishwa akiwa mdogo kwamba kuna hatari ya hiyo hali ya mimba ya mapema.
Kenya ranks third worldwide in teenage pregnancies, and this has caused an uproar from both state and non-state actors who are now calling for immediate action. Rozongwe, NTV.
All right, well, a little away from that report, the National Police Service Commission has lauded the government's move to reform the police service. The Commission's chairperson, Eliud Kinuthia, has also spoken to the contentious matter of medical insurance cover, which was recently switched from the government-run NHIF to a private insurance service provider. NTV's Leila Mohammed has the details for us.
The move by the government to switch medical insurance service providers did not miss some mumbling inside the police service.
We had police officers during our last monitoring visit. We had reports of many challenges that they were experiencing, including capitation, including access to specialized services.
In December 2022, the government released an announcement that it had ditched the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the NHIF, in favor of a CIC consortium scheme with the police service picking Britam Kenya to cover personal accident and work injuries for officers.
And the process of registration is ongoing. And we are dealing with the bulk data here of 107,000 police officers, plus closer to 3,000 civilian staff. This makes about 110,000. If you add about 36 or so thousand Kenya police on service, you find that the number is almost closer to 150,000. So I would call these systemic startup problems.
The Commission has lauded the current administration's agenda to bring much needed reforms within the service, especially on matters welfare and terms of service. The Justice David Maraga-led team has begun its duty with a meeting at the IG's office Monday and is expected to travel to all 47 counties in a bid to get a clear picture of the challenges facing officers in their workstations.
This is a time to come out and say what you feel as police officers about your uniform. I've heard also from other quarters that the policy on integration and decent housing for police officers and integrating them with the community, there are some areas that it did not work.
Officers stationed in volatile areas have been urged to spare a moment and raise their issues around nature of the job, security challenges, risk allowances and other challenges they face in the line of duty. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
Now in Bakassi North, a Member of Parliament James Gakuya has protested the transfer of trial magistrate Elizabeth Juma in a case he is battling in court. The legislator is facing corruption charges alongside 12 others for allegedly breaking procurement laws to get businesses for his companies from the Constituency Development Fund valued at 35 million shillings. Gakuya says he learnt about the magistrate's transfer on Tuesday as his matter was coming up for hearing. He says that he was shocked to learn of the transfer after 12 witnesses had testified and 8 more are to take the stand. Through his lawyer, Gakuya expressed his intention to write to the Chief Justice for consideration. The magistrate has been transferred to a different station and is expected in her new station on the 23rd of January. The matter will be mentioned on the 1st of February this year for further directions. And Baringo County Commissioner Abdirizak Jaldesa has indicated that any herders found armed will be treated as bandits. Speaking in Chemolingot during the creation of Tiaty Central Sub-County, the Commissioner said herders who are armed are a threat to the peace being witnessed in the border of Baringo North and Tiaty, which has lasted for 8 months now.
Any herder who is armed and is grazing with a firearm will be regarded and treated as a bandit. That's very clear. And the action that will be taken against you will be against a criminal who is armed, not a herder. And that is the first resolution we are making as an grazing committee regulation.
Tumekuwa na proposals ya kuunda sub-county mpya ya Tiaty Central. Sababu ukiangalia kimakini hii dunia ya Tiaty ni kubwa sana, na proposal yetu ni kuleta administration as close as the people as possible. Na hiyo ndio proposal tumepeana kwa county commissioner, na tumeomba serikali kuu itusaidie kuwa na new sub-county, new divisions, ile pia machiefs wakaribia watu.
All right, and the public could be set for yet another rise in prices of select products should the Treasury's latest proposal on excise stamps be approved. The Treasury is proposing to increase the cost of excise stamps for a raft of products, including cosmetics, cigarettes and fruit juices, through the Exercisable Goods Management System Amendment Regulations of 2023. Let's take a look at that report by Judith Cherono.
The cost of living has been gradually coming down lately, but the latest proposal from the National Treasury could see cost pressures resurge as the executive proposes to increase the cost of excise stamps across various products. Excise stamps are generated by the Kenya Revenue Authority and are used to trace and track all products which are subject to excise duty, if the proposal from Treasury sees the light of day. The cost per excise stamp for cigarettes will increase from 2 shillings and 80 cents to 5 shillings. The cost per excise stamp of fruit juices will increase from 60 cents to 2 shillings and 20 cents. The cost per excise stamp of cosmetics will increase from 60 cents to 2 shillings and 50 cents. The Kenya Revenue Authority has in the past defended the use of excise stamps, saying they are crucial in helping the economy trace and arrest counterfeits.
If you look at, for example, how stamps are costed, because, for example, the cost of an excise stamp for water is 0.5 cents. the one for soft drinks about 0.6 cents. And you look at what is the value of this stamp. And sometimes I think the challenge when we're having this conversation is that some people think, oh, the stamp is only serving the purpose of revenue generation, which is not necessarily true. It is true. One of the reasons why what the stamp is doing is revenue generation. But look at it from, you know, a perspective of the stamp protecting you as a manufacturer from illicit trade.
The proposal by the Treasury is contained in the Accessible Goods Management System Amendment Regulations of 2023, which seek to amend the regulations which came into force in 2017. Judith Cherono, NTV Business.
All right, and that's Judith Cherono on that report. Well, time to look at what's in the dailies. I'm not alone in studio. It's a new year, but we are still back in the studio. I am with Dunstan Omari, lawyer, political analyst. A very good morning. Wakili, karibu sana.
Asante
and
sana.
I know we are past already katikati ya mwezi, but
no,
Happy New Year.
It's New Year.
Is it too late? No. Professor Alfred Omenya, urban development expert and also governance analyst. Karibu sana. Very good morning, Prof.
Thank you. Good morning.
Welcome back to AM Live after some hiatus.
Yes.
All right, so let's
Glad
begin with a look at what's in the dailies. We'll begin with the Daily Nation, and this resonated across some of the other dailies as well. I can see also on the Standard. I'll be taking a look at that in a moment. A cheating nation. This is actually stemming from a report that was released yesterday by the government. So this new government survey, according to the Nation, has exposed the extent of extramarital affairs in Kenya, revealing that men have an average of 7 sexual partners in their lifetime, while women have 2. The report also details trends in sexual behavior in the counties in the past 12 months, showing how the reckless behavior could be fueling the spread of sexually transmitted infections, including that of HIV. Percentages of men and women who had 2 partners in the past 12 months, you have a number, top 5 counties: Narok, Migori, Elgeyo Marakwet, West Pokot, Embu. Top 5 counties for women, you have Murang'a, Kericho, Busia, Kiambu, Bungoma. It's a very extensive report there on the Standard. In fact, State of the Nation, the good, bad and ugly, that demographic survey on the Nation, on the Standard, they're also talking about the issue of the cheating, average numbers of sexual partners among the men and women, HIV testing, 47% of women and 39% of men tested in the last 12 months of survey. You also have the issue of gender-based violence, physical violence against women declining from 20% in 2014 to 16% in 2022. And also there are matters of land ownership there and vaccination as well. Wakili Dunstan, so this is interesting. It's actually a very extensive report we've seen from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Study unearthing shocking truth about widespread infidelity. Should we be having that conversation as a nation? Because we're looking at the issue of the spread of HIV and AIDS and the kind of work that the country has done to be able to manage and curb the spread of HIV among the population. So should we be concerned?
Very much concerned, because many of the Kenyans and many of the people tend to hide from reality. What the country is discussing about is the reality on the ground. It is us. It's not any other people, no foreigners. It's how have we transited from the traditional way of looking at things to what we are today, and the projections of how society is going to live. Globally, the effect of globalization is now being felt in this country. The reality that a human being is not a static human being. Value systems are continuously evolving. As a lawyer, I'll tell you, the law equally evolves. So we are looking at, the problem I have is that people are comparing and calling the new norm as infidelity. Infidelity will be infidelity when you contextualize that if the majority of Kenyans are doing it, then that is a norm. The few aged and there are few analog who see life from that, how life was, are completely different. On the question of HIV infection, it's no longer really a big issue. Cancer becomes the greatest threat to the Kenyans as we are seated here. HIV, with the ARVs being present, really is a slow type of sickness. Unlike cancer, unlike road accidents, unlike domestic violence, which is now the cause of the majority of murder issues. So, but I totally agree with the media, and I totally agree with the survey that
this is a conversation.
This is a conversation that we can never run away from. Originally, the conversation about condoms, the conversation about contraceptives, the issues about family planning matters was a discussion. Nobody, no media house, no newspaper, no parent, no relative could talk about. Today, it forms 80% of the discussions on TV, on newspapers, on boardrooms, on sitting rooms. So the society is opening up that this is us, and this is us, and this is us. We can never run away from ourselves.
All right. Now, before I get to you, Prof, of course, also joining us in studio is Vincent Kimusop, a governance expert this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Vincent, and Happy New Year. We just began the conversation, but I said, yeah, we're already halfway mid-month, but Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to my
Happy New Year,
Karibu sana Bwana Vincent to the studio. But let me get to Prof. Alfred Omenya. I want to get your thoughts on this particular report that has certainly dominated most of the headlines this morning. What do you think about this conversation?
I think, Zainab, the conversation, as Maria said, is a conversation that we must have.
Right.
Yeah, I think...
we cannot escape it.
Yeah, we cannot really escape it, and it's a more complex conversation. In fact, we're talking about sex, sexuality, and health. Mm-hmm. And is a global conversation as much as it's a local conversation. We know just a few days ago, there's been a lot of conversation about the LGBT community. Yes. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about conversations around, you know, HIV and AIDS. Mm-hmm. Then we're talking about conversations about multiple sexual partners, as it actually were. We are a society that is inserted in global realities, and the nature of our governance and governance systems comes with a whole raft of freedoms that may be positive, but on the other hand, may assault, you know, the way society is organized, and our norms and cultures and values and so on. It would be stupid to put our heads in the sand and assume none of these are happening. In fact, the headlines are interesting. A cheating nation already you know, highlights a position that it's actually wrong to have more than multiple partners. And yet the report is saying that's the reality. So will we actually regulate morality and say, you know, sex between two consenting adults is immoral or even illegal? Yes, I think
so. This is a quite tricky subject.
These are pertinent conversations that we must have. I know this is a subject that we run away from. You remember, Zainab, when there was the issue about sex education in schools. We again ran away from that and said, look here, we are actually, you know, introducing our children to sex, you know, at a very early age. And yet, on the other hand, we know in reality, we have a lot of underage pregnancies in this nation. Yes, I think if you look at it, whichever way you look at it, whether you look at it from a health perspective, whether you look at it from a cultural perspective, whether you look at it from global discourses, some had to write in a bid that our firm is putting, that our firm does not discriminate against gays, lesbians, and those sort of things. So this is becoming a reality, and I think the more we engage in this debate with open-mindedness, the better. And I like it that this is actually, the statistics is coming from Kenya Bureau of Statistics, basically saying that these sort of statistics and demographics are very, very useful for us going forward, and even as we shape our policy.
All right. Vincent, I want to get your thoughts as well from this report, but also there are quite, you know, progressive issues that have also come out from that. According to the survey, for instance, 1 in 4 persons in Kenya right now, 26% females, 27% males, have some form of health insurance, underlining the access to healthcare quality in the country. So this is quite interesting. What are your thoughts on the whole issue?
I think, first of all, I want to say that the areas of expertise that when I speak with authority.
Yes, of course. I can imagine you're definitely not a health expert.
This is not one of the areas of expertise. But I just want to say that the KDHS is usually a tool that is used by the Ministry of Health for planning, so that the public policy interventions are informed by evidence. I'm happy to say that, of course, the headline has taken the direction it has gone, that there are still also very important pieces of information in the KDHS that we should not lose focus on. For example, information around planning, information about access to healthcare, the whole issue around insurance that you've also pointed out. And also, we devolved healthcare 10 years ago as a result of the constitution that currently governs the country. And some of its data is very helpful to shape our conversations. What are we getting right? What is it that we need to improve on? So I think for me, for example, you have part of the things that the information pointed out clearly that the Kenyan family is shrinking. So from a planning perspective, because you need this data when we are doing roads, when we are doing, when we are allocating resources. We are in the month of January. As you know very well, that the budget making process is currently ongoing. Where we then will ask ourselves, are we taking our shillings to speak to the needs that the country should be addressing? Right. We have invested heavily, for example, in the past 10 years in doing a lot of roads, in doing the hardware of development. Is it time we actually examine ourselves? Could it be that the problem really is in our software? I think alongside this, we've also had a lot of data, a lot of reports, for example, in some parts of our country, issues to do with violence, domestic violence. So it helps us to say, hey, beyond the socio-economic issues that are emerging, are there things that we need to check? Because development is not just the hardware. Development is when both the software are going hand in hand with the hardware, so that the whole complete person is taken care of in all areas and in all shapes. All right, fantastic. So I'm just going to peruse through these pages to get to the next report, which is Kenya's fertility rate is dropping. The survey says there has been a 50% decline globally in the past 70 years. That trend has been endorsed by the demographic experts as one that is positive for the country's health outcome. Also, this is quite a big issue now. The health survey also finds that 85% of women and 73% of men have undergone HIV testing in the past 12 months. However, according to that data, many Kenyan youth do not know how to prevent against HIV infection, and nearly half of the Kenyan teenagers aged between 15 and 17 years do not know how to protect themselves against HIV and AIDS infection. This coming after last year's World AIDS Day report showing that the country had recorded an increase in new HIV infections from 32,000 to 34,000 for the first time in a decade. All right, moving to this other issue, which is education, before we take a break. So the ministry has dropped the plan to abolish boarding schools. The Ministry of Education has rescinded its plan to abolish the boarding schools for grades 1 to 9 beginning this academic year. However, boarding secondary schools that are still running under the 844 system have been encouraged to introduce day wings to accommodate more students. The Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Moshogu allaying fears that the government would abolish boarding arrangements for junior secondary schools, and this they did put in place some of these areas where the families would say, our students and pupils are walking long distances to go to school, so they were given that opportunity, and it has rescinded that particular decision. Wakili, what do you think of that decision by the government?
And basically just looking at where we are in terms of the implementation of the curriculum and some of the challenges facing the education sector right now.
Systemic and systemic challenges of any startup, whether business, whether a change of government policy, those are teething problems. The change of the curriculum from 844 to the new curriculum will have its own small issues. What I'm happy about the government is receptive to the data that is coming from the ground. What they say that the ground is different means that government is listening. What the policy they make, can it work, it can't work, they review that. If we had a government that was a boardroom government that says this thing must be dealt with, a policy has been spelled out. So I think the CS, CS Machogo and PS Belio are doing a fantastic job in trying to accommodate to the realities. Two, the economic realities of setting up infrastructure to accommodate students is quite very expensive, time consuming for it to be actualized. So the realization that now that CBC is domiciled in the lower primary school, the realization that teachers need to be put in place, whether they are called interns or what, the instructors, TSC is trying to run with that question. Three, the realization that we are moving away from COVID when the school calendar completely collapsed. And now we are starting a new calendar this month that will be the normal calendar we know from January to December. That is a new dawn again we have. We have the political transition from the Uhuru-led government to the Ruto-led government. That has also an impact on that. There are challenges for the CDF that now has been resolved. So there was a shortfall in terms of finances, and also the question about boarding parents. We are looking at young kids. Are young kids going to be away from their parents? The formative stages of childcare demands that a child grows within our family. And that is international laws all over, plus the constitution and local laws. But the reality is, do those schools that are neighboring, who are supposed to be day schools, have the capacity, the quality to provide quality education as per the expectations of the parents and as per the needs of that child? So those are the really issues that we are having. That when we talk about boarding school, we're also looking at the question of removing children from their parents for a very long time. It reached a point where kids who are supposed to go to class 1, parents are taking them to boarding. You get kids who are 6 years, already they have been put in boarding. The also big issue of parents running away from their children. We saw it during COVID. Parents were saying they don't want the children at home, not because they want those children to go to study, but the children have become a menace. Most parents are not able. The question of parenting is a very, very critical issue that is coming up. And the expenditure aspect. Do families have the capacity to retain children at home and feed them? Or they are saying, because government provides for free meals in school, let the children. There are quite a number of issues, and that's I'm happy that the CS Machogo and the SPS and the technocrats at the ministry are listening to the voices of the consumers of the policies that they are coming up
on the reforms within the sector. All right, so before I continue with Prof and Vincent, we have to take a break, but when we come back, we will be delving into perhaps what is one of the biggest issues from yesterday's event. Well, there was a plot to abduct, kill Chebukati. Ruto says this is an assertion that, an allegation that the president made yesterday. He says the assassination plan was sanctioned at the highest state offices from the previous administration. We're going to get to that in a moment. Also, changes IEBC wants before the 2027 polls. We'll also be delving much more on this particular issue. The commissioner's stamp just ended yesterday, so we do have some vacancies there. What does that portend for the country? We'll be coming back to look at that. And also the Business Daily Treasury plots 300% stamp tax hike on alcohol, makeup, those are just some of the products that the Treasury is targeting on this issue. All right, so let's take a very quick break here on AM Live. Remember, you can always use the hashtag on our Twitter handle at MLiveNTV. That's the hashtag at Zainab Ismail at NTV Kenya. Let's talk. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us.
Yo, Butru Seke, the sharp guard up in the mix. You know what I'm saying? NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa pe banga. Festa pe banga. Another banga. And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sing kama vitu unanilea.
Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare. Mix on NTV. Don't touch that dial. Not it. No, what it?
Is there a problem?
Nothing. What's the problem?
I said nothing.
If that's the case, then
All
let's
right.
go to sleep.
All right, I'll tell you already.
Come in. Let's talk here. Here. Come in.
Forever my love.
Tazama Kiu kwenye Rembo TV.
Nenda wapi?
Leave me alone.
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
My name is Michael Olunga. Watch Spot On every Monday, 10 p.m. on NTV.
The Nation e-paper has an exciting new platform that is easy to navigate, gives a premium reading experience, you have access to past editions, and so much more. Scan the QR for a free edition today. Enjoy the truth, anywhere, anytime.
All right, welcome back to Live, and let's get to that report by Sydney Chazima promised earlier. Now, President William Ruto has affirmed that there was an attempt to abduct and murder IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati days to the announcement of the 2022 presidential election. The end game for this, Ruto says, was to paralyze the commission and subvert the will of the people. The president says that the resolve came after attempts to bribe and sway Chebukati to alter the results failed. Let's get that report.
It appears the dust is yet to settle from the chaotic events at the Bomas of Kenya on the 15th of August 2022. President William Ruto has now weighed in on the matter. Speaking at State House, Nairobi, during a meeting with top officials from different state organs, President Ruto alleged that there was an attempt on IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati's life.
We also know that there was a direct attempt to abduct Wafula Chebukati and murder him so that the commission would be paralyzed, or a compliant commissioner take over and subvert the people's sovereignty.
On Monday, during the launch of the 2022 post-election evaluation report, Chebukati and Commissioners Boya Molu and Abdi Gulie had detailed how they were forced into hiding.
We went into hiding. We had to put off our phones, leave them in bombers, send away our security, and we rode in Anoa to a known location. Our only contact to Kenya and the world was the television.
They went into Siberia, but they are not telling me where I was. Of course, I was in my house, taking my cups of tea and waiting if anybody is coming on the door. Of course, nobody came.
The president lauded what he terms a sheer bravery from the commissioners.
Please let us clap for those people.
And went on to detail how the entire plot was hatched.
The mechanism constituted a syndicate to execute a series of strategies consisting of bribery, blackmail, extortion, threats, and intimidation of various public officials of the IEBC.
However, ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna has downplayed the president's remarks.
If you are alleging that somebody was or there was an attempt to kidnap the chair and to even murder him, you know, those are very, very grave allegations. I wish that the president will appear before that commission of inquiry and tender that evidence so that all of us can know that what he's talking about is factual and it's not just hot air.
These allegations by the president come months after blame games played out in the Azimio camp following Raila Odinga's 5th stab at the presidency.
There's a day I called Kibicho. I told Kibicho, the way things are moving, we need to act very fast. So he asked me, Babu, what do we do? I told him, Kibicho, we need to arrest Chebukati immediately for bungling elections. Then, Cherera to announce Baba as what? As what? As the winner. You see. Or we go for a rerun.
Outgoing IEBC boss Wafula Chebukati has called for a commission of inquiry into the events that took place prior and after the declaration of presidential results.
We welcome that commission of inquiry. Let it be a fair commission of inquiry, not like the kangaroo court that we saw against the 4 commissioners. If indeed there was an attempt to subvert the will of the people, it's a serious allegation.
The nation will be keen to know whether President Ruto will form a commission of inquiry into the grave allegations. Sydney Chazima, NTV.
All right, and that is the latest from the Bomas of Kenya saga. Well, that's quite a serious allegation there by the head of state, no less. I mean, the head of state. I'll begin with you, Prof. I want to get your thoughts on those sentiments.
No, thanks, Zainab. I think from where I sit, I find the sentiments a bit worrying coming from the head of state. You know, if it was just any ordinary politician outside there, you know, we could take those allegations lightly. But given that he's the head of state and is privy to quite a lot of information, including intelligence information, you know, these allegations then become very, very serious because of the person who said them, right, rather than the allegations per se. And of course, secondly, it goes to what we've been saying here ad nauseum, that we need to fix presidential elections in this country once and for all. Because you can actually see the sort of stakes that are there. If the president is to be believed, somebody could have been killed. Chebukati could have been killed. We would be having a president, you know, who maybe did not win elections. Mm-hmm. What we are saying is that those things are possible. Mm-hmm. And this throws the spanner into the works. Again, about the credibility of the Kenyan presidential election to be in particular. We know it's a very high-stake elections. And we know claims have been made from both parties that are totally extreme and mind-blowing for ordinary Kenyans to fathom and even comprehend. From, you know, world superpowers intervening in the elections to now stories of abductions and so on. And when the people who are actually conducting the elections themselves, Chebukati, the chairman in particular, saying this needs to be investigated, I think what you're looking at here is rot of unbelievable proportions. And I think as the president offers leadership in reform of IEBC, if he really cares about this country, he should do it with clean hands, he should do it with a clean heart and for the love of the country, so that we can bury this disease that infects all Kenyans once and for all, before people are killed, before this country is thrown into turmoil again. We know the number of times that the very fabric of this country, the very existence of this country has been threatened. And it has actually been around the IEBC. That's partly why I take these comments very, very seriously and still, you know, push that really the president should offer leadership in terms of unearthing what actually happened in the previous election,
right,
and dealing with it once and for all.
All right. Vincent, so there have been calls for an inquiry and a commission of inquiry to be formed to look into exactly what transpired at the Bomas of Kenya on the 15th of August. But, you know, from where you sit, so these allegations are quite grave from the president. What do you read from it?
I think if you could allow me just to give context to this.
Right.
If you look at the data, our economics data from all the way to 2000 and even actually all the way to 88 or even 83, every time we went to an election, the economy's performance is directly related to how we actually manage an election. The only time we had a very good, easy transition out of an election that did not much affect the economy, it actually affected the economy positively, is 2002.
2002, right.
So, and the worst is when we was in 2008. Actually, the economy came down from 7.5 all the way to close to just slightly above 1%. So that reduction impacts in terms of wealth generation, it impacts of job creation, investor confidence and all that. So elections therefore by in itself has a major significant impact on how we prosper as a people, including all the players that we are. So for me, looking at therefore those statements by the president, the statement by the chairman of the IEBC, the statement even by the I think that should be Professor Gului talking about where they were. So when you look at all those statements, it tells you very clearly that there are issues around the 2022 elections that needs to be settled. Now, you know very well one of the ways of a country emerging out of a situation better and stronger, like in 2007, yes, we lost lives, yes, the economy went down, but those commissions of inquiry, those the Waki commissions, the Kriegler commissions, and even including the committee of experts gave us the Constitution of Kenya 2010. If you leverage on a crisis, they normally say all leaders, the best leaders know how to utilize crises for the good of a country. Right. So I would be able to say that therefore to the president, who is now, who was a contestant yet at that time, but now the head of state, commander-in-chief, and also the head of government, that what is it that we therefore learn from the 2022 elections, which yes, of course, largely peaceful, that what truth do we need to get and glean out of that will take and make and position Kenya better? So I would be able to say that let us have a very good and a candid conversation as a people to see, is it the way of a commission of inquiry? Is it the way of a parliamentary select committee? So that then we glean the most out of it. Because the best way of dealing with a crisis is actually confronting the very crisis. The IEBC.
But do you think this will solve the problem? Okay, so apart from 2002, which is largely an accepted election, you have all the other elections highly contested. Have we not learned?
We have learned a lot. We've actually, I'll tell you this. I remember having a conversation with I don't know if it was even on this program. You know, a lot of these conversations. Okay. I'll tell you, we have grown very much as a country. Just look at some of the institutions that manage our elections. If you look at the security sector, you see their maturity. They provide security across the divide. If you look at the IEBC itself, their depth has grown. If you even look at the judiciary, the Supreme Court, if you compare Supreme Court 2013, Supreme Court 2017 and 2022, you see depth and you see progress. So we are making progress. For me, what I'm pointing out is when the emotions settle down, you know, in policy making, one of the things you need to avoid is to reduce your levels of emotions and confront the reality and say, what is it that is good? Because the maximum, for example, Ruto can serve, according to our constitution, is 10 years. So within the 10 years, what is it that will be his contribution towards deepening and enhancing our democratic processes? I would want to say is that inviting us into the conversations, one of the options could be, yes, the formation of a commission of inquiry. That is not necessarily the only options. Even a parliamentary committee can be able to look into these issues. Or even, I need to check all the possible options, and then we make a decision as a country that what is it that we are learning from 2022 that we need to confront, because it's only the truth, Zainab, that will set us free. Right. And mastering the courage to confront the truth is what distinguishes and defines a transcendent leadership, which we hope and we look up to the president to provide.
All right. Wakili Dunstan, your thoughts on the same? Look, and should we just do an entire audit of the election process to just get to the bottom of the issue?
Well, I've seen the president very emphatic, addressing a very critical question. I'm not worried about the message the president has brought out, or Babu, we know the message they have brought out. I'm worried about the audience. The audience are independent officers and very important stakeholders in the justice system of this country. The president says with authority that this was sanctioned from the highest office.
Correct.
There was only one office ahead of the current president, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta. The question then we ask, was the president addressing Kenyans, or was that message intended to be aired by NTV worldwide? How do we appear?
You think this is a political statement by the president?
I'm heading to that direction. These are politicians, and that should have been done better at Rongo or Bondo or Bomet or in West Mogrango. The reason why I'm saying this, whether the president tells everybody that he believes and he has evidence that President Uhuru Kenyatta and by extension Raila Odinga.
However, he did not mention any specific names.
It is a race that was between Raila Odinga and the president. It will never sink into Azimio people, whether the president and his team try as much as possible to depict that the other side did that. Raila Odinga the other day has been also putting the same political narrative. His elections were stolen. Foreigners were involved. The question I put to Zainab, to the Kenyans, will politicians ever stop politicking for the purpose of keeping their constituencies together? And that's why I'm saying the president got it right, but the message was not to be done the way it was done. It would have been done in a political rally at Kamkunji or elsewhere. The reason why we are saying this, over the weekend, the CS for ICT, homecoming, There seemed to be a national healing. There seemed to be a common purpose of peace. That was on Sunday, Saturday, Sunday. 2 days, the stakes have gone up. Temperatures are going to be up. You've already seen Sifuna coming out, the Azimio team coming out to raise these issues. Do we need these issues now when the cost of bread, when petrol prices, when kids are going to school next week and parents don't have school fees? My position could be elections, whether we like it or not, will be motive. The American presidential election that has been there for hundreds of years, when Trump and Biden, it was a close, safe, the same story we have seen it. The IEBC, the voting pattern, and everywhere. In Britain, when it was also this, so Kenyans ignore this talk.
But Wakili, if these are the same issues that are being raised by the political class, are certainly issues that affect the democracy of the country, if not addressed now, and we're heading to a general election, just 4 years, that's quite a short time. Wouldn't we still find ourselves in the same murky waters that we did find ourselves in 2022?
We will continuously be in that murky waters,
if not
so long as competition is stiff. Let me tell you, Zainab, and this is a reality, the way we dealt with the question of sex. Presidential elections is life and death. We as the people made a constitution that stripped the powers of distributing of resources from the presidency. We took it to parliament. We took it to commissions. What have we gone back? We have now created another monstrous animal called the presidency. You have got to go to get a road done through asking the president. We have completely moved away from constitutionalism to individual. And that is the fight that we have. We either need to redo another constitution where we remove the reasons as to why presidential elections is life and death. Institutions that were created, called the IEBC, the judiciary, and the others, were supposed to deal with this question. But we have failed. So in my own view, are we likely to have a judicial inquiry that will unearth anything? Who will be the appointing authority of that judicial inquiry? Still, the politics behind it will be, you have appointed a kangaroo court. So, in my own view, if Kenyans could listen to me, is we ignore all these things. We will have them. Every election will be having them. Right now, the president and his team are defending the 3. Right now, Raila Odinga and his team are defending the 4. Where is the Kenyan?
Look, we're going to come back to that issue in a moment. Prof, what do you, do we need to have this review done now, or should we just continue with life and find ourselves in 2027 and move on?
Yes, Zainab, let me be cynical,
right,
and suggest that, let life go on. Let's not bother with these things. Why? And going by Dunstan's statement.
And is it a bother, or is it actually streamlined?
That our leaders and our leadership has demonstrated total lack of goodwill to resolving these matters and taking the country forward. I'm sorry to say that so far, the president has only played politics. The president has put a lot of questionable people into office. The software that we need to undo to get this country forward is not being engaged by either the president or the opposition, as it were. Politicians are still only looking at their political interests, including the sensitive matter of the IEBC. And my position is very simple. Let us not be taken through this circus and through these musical chairs. Really, if we really care about this country, it is time that the political leadership closes ranks and deals with these matters once and for all. But if they want to continue playing politics as usual, then let's accept that that is our lot until this country collapses, so that serious leadership can take over and move this country to the right direction. The problem with Kenya, Zainab, the problem with Kenya is a software problem. It's a software problem. From government offices to this IBC that we're talking about, to the presidency itself, to the opposition and the way they conduct themselves, is a crisis of leadership. And this is my point. There is no need of wasting our time. In fact, these politicians can meet. They can meet and simply pick
under the rug?
Exactly, sweeping things under the rug.
Why?
So you see, the thing is that that's what I'm telling you. We actually have a leadership crisis. We need to sit down. I mean, it's a longer conversation. All these leaders, so-called leaders that we have in place, are the ones who subverted the intentions of the constitutions and personalized issues that should actually be institutionalized. From the office of the presidency, that has become a person. We see these leaders speaking. Of course, we're seeing the president the other day. I mean, the hero worship that we thought was a thing of the past, because we had a new constitution that put in place systems of governance and offices. We know the way government works. We know the way the opposition works. We know the way the presidency works. We know the way all those offices work. Has nothing to do with the rule of law, to do with systems, to do with institutions and so on. And we're not seeing this being addressed. And that's why we're saying, look here, politicians, if you choose to throw the country under the bus, please do not waste our time on serious matters. Let this leadership continue doing your stupid things until a point when either the country implodes because we never dealt with critical software issues, or until such a point that decent leadership would arise from the population itself and take this country forward. What we have is a crisis of leadership across, from Senate all the way to Parliament. Okay. Look at these characters. These guys are still leaders of parties, and some of them are speakers in Parliament, some of them are speakers in Senate, some of them are ministers in government. When you talk about
the issue of the software, when you have a software issue, you certainly, take your computer or whatever to be able to deal with that software issue. And I think the issue of IBC is also a software issue that perhaps needs to be addressed. Let me get thoughts from Vincent on the same issue and some of the remarks made by the other panelists.
But I think for me, what I see clearly that will be very important is that the process of selecting the next commissioners of the IEBC ought to be a process that gets us men and women of integrity to serve in this critical commission. As we know very well that the key issue is has been the presidential vote or the presidential election. And it's because of what my colleague has pointed out, Omari, that there is still the influence and the impact of the office of the president is still significant. We thought we were going to solve this through devolution, through the devolved system of governance, but we are also still seeing a lot of focus on that office. You find governors still projecting that there is something they don't have that they can only get through the president. We've seen situations whereby you see a governor who is a head of a government saying that we are in the opposition, which is really not the truth. So we may want to actually have a relook at this thing broadly, Zainab, that what is this still that is still in the presidency that makes this office attractive? I'll tell you this. As long as the presidency will still be as attractive as it is at the moment, as long as our politics is still driven and prosecuted on the altar of ethnic configurations, I can tell you that the presidential elections will still be a highly contested one. I want to take a different tangent from Prof, that I am an optimist myself. It's even in the morning. I think we have to preach hope and inspire the nation that, Prof, there are some good things that have happened in our country. Right. That if we magnify the good, it will help us even move in the trajectory that you would want. This is, for example, the good. You have a robust media. Look today, I was looking at this, the headlines. I don't think we are in the age whereby when we talk to one of the key editors, that there is a control as to what type of what do you call headline that must be there in the following day. So I think that is progress. You also have the contribution of civil society, the contribution of the church, the contribution of faith-based organizations, the private sector. So I think what I see is that it is the clarity in what the country requires that raises the desire for a higher level of leadership. And as the private sector, as these others take their place, it becomes important. I was seeing a report here, Zainab, Professor, the former CS Education has gone back to school.
And
to
I'm
teach.
going to come to...
you're going to come
yeah, you're preempting.
I worked in the media in the past, and I used to sit where you are sitting. So, actually, we can swap position.
Don't take my job.
No, taking your job. It's just telling you that, I'm just pointing out that that is mirroring what you see in the West. Right. You have former advisors of U.S. presidents. Right. You see them retiring to the Kennedy School. You see David Axelrod went to start the School of Politics at the University of Chicago. Right. That is a richness that you're seeing the maturation in our system. So I would want to really appeal to my colleagues that let's be the kind of people who see the glass as half full, not a half empty. If we sort out our issues of elections, I can tell you, it's very predictable. You had when we last, I think it was 2 years ago, when we had elections it was the last elections in Germany. On the same day, you had a marathon in Berlin, where, as in, things have, the systems are so effective that other activities that are planned, even during an election day, life goes on. So we are yet to get there, but I would say that if you move outside the borders of our country, we have a country that is really admired in many areas. Our professionals, given opportunity, are transforming Rwanda. You see, one of the biggest earners of foreign exchange in our country are actually remittances from our diaspora. What are these people doing? It's about brain gain. So I would want to say that I'm not speaking to Prof here, but I'm speaking to everybody who to inspire them that there is still a lot of grit, that if we actually just put our house in order, we can compete, Zainab, globally effectively and be the country that we would want to be.
Well, putting our house in order, well, tomorrow will be quite an interesting day as well, because the Senate will be having a special sitting, and this is basically to approve the amendments which essentially will detail the process of the recruitment of new commissioners into office. But Wakili, with all the commissioners now out, but you still have Irene Masit defending and trying to fight for her position before the tribunal, where does this leave us, legally speaking? Are we in a legal dilemma?
I don't think we are in any legal or constitutional dilemma, because governments worldwide have never found themselves in a situation they cannot be able to solve a crisis. One, Chebukati has not handed over. He only handed over the audit report. Right. He never handed over keys or his office to anybody. He's still the chairman. He will be there until he hands over to another incoming chairman who has been sworn in.
But the office must first be declared vacant.
The offices are going to be declared vacant.
They have already been.
They already have been declared vacant. So which means there is no substantive chairperson or the other commissioners.
The principle perpetuity says that he will still be in office, yet the term has ended until he hands over. Okay. If there is a need for commissioners to be in place, for example, the president dies, the deputy president dies, and such things arise, and there are need for an election. As a former government officer, he'll be recalled. The principle of recalling, because governments cannot fathom a lacuna or a vacuum. They will be recalled, they will conduct an election. That has been done. Remember, constitutional terms are constitutionally ingrained like in stone. In 2013, we faced a similar problem. The election was supposed to be conducted on August. The Attorney General went to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court enlarged a constitutional timeline and said the elections will be done in December. So let Kenyans not worry if today we need...
So there is no vacuum within the commission at this point?
The vacuum is abstract vacuum. It's a similar discussion we had when we were discussing in law in our constitutional class when I was teaching, when the new constitution was being promulgated. At the time the old constitution, Kibaki is signing a new constitution. If he died before the signature was complete, could there have been a constitutional crisis of non-existence of a constitution? People will always tell you that the situation will determine that will be given life. Article 259 of the Constitution says interpretation of the instruments of Constitution must be purposeful in a manner that will ensure the sovereignty and the continuity of the state is there. So there is no constitutional crisis. I have told you the Constitutional Court can extend the timeline. Parliament can extend. The Attorney General can extend. Lastly, we have the executive order, an instrument that you cannot challenge anywhere, bestowed on the President of the Republic of Kenya. The President can, by an executive order, extend the term for the three people for the purpose to conduct an election or for the purpose to trigger the delimitation of boundaries. This executive order, when Obama found it completely unable to run the country in the US, he resulted into the executive order. So I am appealing to the citizens that this really should not be bothering us. My focus is, let us focus on what is more critical. That is the lifestyle and the cost of living in this country. Senate is going to deal with the law. The law is being amended in terms of the composition of the select panel to advertise for the jobs. Instead, Kenyans start going to your university, pick your certificates, wait, because 6 jobs are going to be declared vacant either next week or on Friday. And the way the president is behaving is that the day Parliament will pass that law, the same day it will be gazetted, the same day a select panel will be appointed, the Chief Justice will swear them in at 6 in the morning, and the work will proceed. So let us not waste a lot of time. Let us not waste a lot of time.
Some insider information.
No, I'm saying we have seen how the president is working. Okay. He does not waste a minute. Remember the backlog we have today. The backlog we have today is because there was a delay after the Akombe and others left IEBC. It almost took 3 years before we filled those vacancies.
All right.
There's a complete change at State House that constitutional and legal timelines, the president is exact on timeline. So that's what I'm saying. The selection will take 2 to 3 months. We Kenyans will continue.
All right. And we'll come back to take a look at the issue of the process of the recruitment of the new commissioners and also the composition of that selection panel in a moment. We have to take yet another break here on MLive NTV. Stay with us. The hashtag, as always, is MLive NTV at Zainab Ismail at NTV Kenya. I'll be sampling some of your comments in a short while. Stay with us.
But I am a traditional man, so might as well tell you this, right? You better introduce me to your family. Even as a pre-candidate, you have to introduce them to me.
I also brought you these chocolates, Belgian. The ones you like so much. You could enjoy them in my company tonight if you want.
Yes, I would love some! Lucy! You shouldn't get involved in adult conversations, okay?
So are chocolates considered adult things then?
It depends.
So may I ask when you were going to tell me about Bruno playing hooky?
Is that true? Bruno played hooky?
Lucy!
It had to be you. Tazama Q kwenye Rembo TV.
Unaenda wapi? Leave me alone!
Recharge and get upgraded. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
What I'm about to do, I'm sure nobody expected.
I want to give them an experience that they will never forget. Every performer has 40 hours of rehearsal booked.
With a band?
I
mean, niko worried. Siwezi taka kama ile kitu kama Fire Festival.
Na kuna ngoma mpya zinakam before Soul Fest.
Hii Soul Fest lakini itahitaji faster changeover.
An artist's worst nightmare, it happened.
We're really in the business of selling emotions, it seems.
Hata sikujua kama kulikuwa na kitu kama hiyo ati kuna bo.
Wameanza kutupa mavitu sasa hii ni scary mazee.
Finally everything is sorted out.
Midundo mitamu vinandana tarumbeta, yote yasikika akipigiwa Maria. Midundo mitamu vinandana tarumbeta, yote yasikika akipigiwa Maria. Leo twakushangilia tukiwa nayo furaha, salamu Maria, mama wa huruma, twakushangilia.
To get Midundo Mitamu by St. Raphael Benedictine, dial star 811 star 937 hash. Skiza, Na Nation.
All right, and thank you for staying with us. Quite a heavy conversation during the break. Of course, we will have to go back to some of those views shared while we were off air. All right, so what is going to happen now next, of course, is the process of the recruitment of the new commissioners. It is going to be quite a lengthy process, I believe, but also on the proposal of the members of the selection panel. I'm going to point out some of those they proposed in that bill sponsored by the National Assembly leader Kimani Ichung'wah. 2 slots have now been going to be taken away from the Parliamentary Service Commission. They're going to be given to the Public Service Commission and Political Parties Liaison Committee, which gets 1 position each in the 7-member panel. The president, by virtue of his position, could, get a person seconded by PSC to the panel. This could be the case with the PPLC as well. Now, we also have, LSK representation, 1 person, and the interreligious sector as well, getting 1 person. Now, in the current law, Parliamentary Service Commission had 4 slots in the panel, and they were picked by parliamentary parties from the majority and minority parties. So that has certainly gone down. However, it appears that, Prof, that the political class still has an upper hand on this process of the selection panel, right. and the recruitment of the commissioners. Do you foresee any challenge? Do you feel like this is a fair balance?
Yes, I think, Zainab, that's what we're talking about, that we need to look at the spirit of Schedule 1 of the IEBC Act. And I think the idea behind it was really impartiality, was institutions that can produce commissioners that are impartial. So I think even as Parliament as a political class, looks at this thing and makes suggestions, they should be careful, so that it's not seen as though one political group, either the Kenya Kwanza UDA side or the Azimio side, is controlling the commission. Yeah, because I think part of the problem that we had with this existing commission was the manner in which the additional commissioners were handpicked by the president, as it actually were. And
do you foresee the same thing happening?
Yes. So
with this one too?
We know what politicians do, and politicians try to influence. So we're just saying, look, let there be caution amongst the political class. Yeah, because we know at the end of the day what the politicians will want to do. They'll list all these institutions, but then they will actually impose the individuals that these institutions produce, because these institutions are also, in a way, captured by the political class. So another thing, that it's a caution to politicians that they should actually, think of the good of the country, and also think of their own good, because, the shoe hurts eventually when it's on when it's on your feet. That's when you realize that all these measures that are put in place are coming to bite me. Yeah, so they should actually, in a way, put a commission that would be excellent for their opponents. Because that would be the commission that will serve them well when they are in that other position. Otherwise, they'll be crying, and yet they're the ones who put impartial people. Or is any problem at all with any of those people selecting people to the panel? Yeah, selecting people to the panel. I don't think there's any problem at all. The problem is the interference with the intention of that panel, political interference, which continues all the way to the interference with the people who apply to be commissioners and the people who eventually, are declared by the panel to be commissioners. And that's why we're saying, look, I mean, it would be nice if the political class, were able to, step back a little bit and let these institutions control the process and produce for us the leaders we want.
Vincent,
I have been in the race to become a commissioner twice.
Right.
So let me speak as I think that gives me some
insight.
To speak to this issue.
Right.
The truth of the matter is that let's be real in this conversation.
Right.
The reality of it is that all the political class are interested, will have an interest, who not only becomes commissioners of the IEBC,
right,
but also even all the way to the returning officers, all the way to the ground.
Exactly.
I have worked with politicians, Zainab, and my colleagues, I want to tell you,
right,
let's not pretend to say, it's good to keep the ideal, but the reality of it is that all the political class across the divide are interested on who becomes the commissioners of the IEBC and also who becomes the chair of the IEBC.
Right.
And that's why what happens, therefore, in this process is we see what happened in the IPPG 2007, whereby there was a political consensus across the divide.
Yes.
But now, interestingly, you could see even with that political consensus, all the commissioners who appointed to the then ECK, their allegiance to the appointing authority is a strip you can still be able to see, and the rupture was what happened in 2007. Right. So what do I have? One is to ask ourselves, as of the moment, is the selection panel that is going to preside over the process as representative politically, yes or no? I think to the much I can see is that you can see a demonstration of a progress of inclusivity in broadening members of the selection panel. Now, secondly, is that what is happening at the moment, Zainab, is that all the political actors, what they're doing behind the scenes is that they're already meeting behind the doors to see who among our professionals and people they can trust are actually being encouraged to apply. So that is already what is happening, even as we are waiting Parliament the Senate to conclude the process. Now, what will be important out of this process, Zainab, for me is the following. One, is because of the importance and the sensitivity of the IEBC. My appeal first to the media is to be committed to ensure that they cover and they actually keep Kenyans updated about the process, the members of the panel, the entire process. What that has to do is that it injects a level of accountability, including to the selection panel. Number two is that to actually also follow through the application process, the shortlisting process, get to see how many people applied, how many people have shortlisted, and then even those who will be interviewed. That journey of fact-checking, what is their contribution, because it will help us to understand what kind of people are we having. I remember in 2020, that was after the promulgation of the Constitution of 2010, one of the transitional clauses was that the Chief Justice then was going to exit after a period of 6 months. And there was a process of the appointment of the next CJ. What happened? The then President Kibaki, you remember, he nominated people, and he was told by our legal fraternity, hey, Mr. President, you are living in the past. This is this is something that requires a public, it's the Judicial Service Commission that is meant to preside of this. Now, that helped to ensure that there was spotlight in the process. Number two is that there was another thing that happened, and I think it's good to give Kenyans credit. I remember the Daily Nation on a weekly basis used to serialize who are the applicants. They would actually tell us, so-and-so, this is the number of ruling, this is his judicial philosophy, this is her contribution. Even by the time the final person was elected, Kenyans were part of the process. So for me, I want to say at this moment, I want to speak to civil society, I want to speak to the members of the media, I want to speak to the private sector and all the stakeholders because of the weighty and the sensitivity of the matter at hand. Please let us play our role. This thing of abdicating our responsibility by looking at the political class, looking at the president, we fall short. I can tell you, it is possible to actually see very clearly if you have a process that is open, accountable, and actually that is held into accountability, be able to see who dropped the ball. And then what happens if there is accountability before, during, and after the process? Even the person who will finally be appointed by the president knows very clearly that I am a product both of a legal process and a publicly a participatory process that has vested this responsibility to me as a Kenyan. Now, the appeal then to those who will take office, who will be given the opportunity, is that they carry themselves as men and women of integrity. We already have the experience of Maraga, that it's actually possible once you are sworn into office that you swear fidelity to perform as the Constitution expected. I think if we do that and everybody plays their role, what's going to happen? This thing of a blame game will reduce. I want to say this with your permission, just one word, one word. That's one statement. Sorry, one statement. I apologize. I want to appeal to is a statement that used to be say, fellow Kenyans, that let us move away from this thing of a blame game. When something happens, that we are all very keen to look at who is to blame, rather than what is it that we would have done to make things better.
All right. And even as we look forward to trying to make things better, we certainly cannot avoid the blame game at this point, because I don't know if you foresee any challenges. Let me get to Wakili. The other day I had a conversation with the Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, and one of the issues he raised in that interview was the fact that he says that the president, he's trying to manage the commissioners that would be put in place for, you know, what would be happening in 2027. So he wants to line up his eggs properly. So are we just going to see something smooth, easy sailing, or suddenly a big issue, a challenging mountain that we're going to face right now when the selection process begins?
I will answer to the former Vice President and His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka that is not the right position. Putting Omari or putting a professor at an office is situational and contextual. Correct. Let us look at the character of the exiting chairman. He was a very senior lawyer. He went and contested an election as a member of ODM.
Yes.
Raila Odinga's party.
Correct.
That time, he was with William Ruto in ODM. So politically, Chebukati is a surrogate of Raila Odinga. When he landed the job, he hurt Raila Odinga more, according to Raila Odinga, and he supported the other, that is Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is why the 2017 election was nullified.
Correct.
And Raila Odinga was very categorical that Chebukati is working for the people who he was supposed to hurt. 2020, this time now, that time, William Ruto as a deputy president and the president, then Uhuru, were so mad that the election had been nullified. Who had nullified that election? One Chief Justice, Maraga. That time Maraga was a marked man. Today Maraga is at State House, comfortable with William Ruto, comfortable landing to new positions. That is how politics change. The Chebukati person, who that time was seen as a devil, is now the darling of William Ruto. Tomorrow it will change. It is contextual. So that the situation,
a wider, more.
So me, what I'm telling Kenyans, politicians will always be changing as they change. As the people now in William Ruto's camp, when 2027 will come, where they are coming from, if the region has moved a certain direction, they will move away from William Ruto, as those ones in Raila Odinga will be moving on this side. A new discussion starts. And that is what I'm telling Kenyans. The politicians are chameleons. They will never have a principle. Their only common interest is what is their interest at that time. That interest at 2, Zainab, today at 2, again you'll see new realignment. So when that bill goes to Parliament, we don't expect the voting in Parliament to be based on law, on constitution, or on the best interest of these Kenyans. The interest in Parliament is about who is going to deal with us, as my good friend Kima said, who is going to be good for us in 2027. But that 2027, the dynamics will have changed. My appeal to citizens, most countries, citizens ignore politicians. Citizens ignore politicians, they do their stuff. Here, we are so much worried about the politics, and they are changing daily. When shall we ever change our priorities and we ignore the politicians and deal with our stuff?
All right.
It's just point of information to what Omari said. It only happens in where systems have become strong. You see, when we are still struggling with what we will eat in the evening, the issues of housing, the issues of transport, then therefore those who are in decision making matter a lot. But Zainab, when you are in a situation whereby education, security, housing, transport has already been dealt with, then politics moves to the secondary issue as the other things also emerges. The other thing also is that as an economy of a country grows and more people are given opportunity to express themselves, more professional bodies take their place, and the private sector, what happens? The premium of politics come down. There's a former Secretary of Foreign Affairs in the UK says that the UK, Britain, does not have permanent friends or enemies. It only has permanent interests. I'll tell you, and I'll tell Kenyans that the political class, they don't have any friends or they don't have any enemies. They only have permanent interests. So to all Kenyans and to all citizens watching is that please don't pick their friends nor don't pick their enemies. The only thing you need to be clear is be clear on your interests. And when your interests are clear, because you play a role in putting them into office, they will seek to align their interests with your interests so that they can get to the office. One politician once said, he was asked a question, why is it that you don't seem to be caring about the ordinary citizen, but you only come to them during an election? He said, you know what? During an election, the ordinary citizen is an employer. And when you want a job, you sleep with the employer, you do what the employer requires, you eat with them, you sit with them. But after the employer has given you the opportunity, they go back to their ordinary level. as I take my extraordinary position. Okay. So this was, I'm just telling you as it is. Yes. Right. And it's good to say it, because part of the reasons why we come here is to educate our members of the public, right. So that then we elevate the quality and the level of our politics.
All right. Yeah. Prof, you will wind up that conversation for us, but allow me to just mention that quick statement that was put out by the immediate former chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Wafula Chebukati, just a couple of hours ago. He says, and I quote, "I was appointed chairperson of the IEBC on the 18th of January 2017 for a constitutional term of 6 years. Yesterday, I successfully completed my term. I wish to thank Kenyans for giving me the opportunity to serve them. It has been an honor. It was undoubtedly a challenging assignment, but I served my country to the best of my ability and in accordance with the oath of office I took. I leave the IEBC with solid governance structures and a stable permanent secretariat. To the IEBC staff, thank you. To the future commission, fidelity to the law is the key to success at IEBC." Signed, Wafula Chebukati. Prof, as we wind up this conversation, remember there are also a raft of proposals that the commission that has just left has put forth. I'll just mention a couple there at a glance. Appointing commissioners 2 years to the election, right. Deploying technology for use at least 2 years to the polls, operationalize the IEBC fund, adopt joint security response, enhance collaboration with the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, among many other proposals that were in that report. Right. Are we able to achieve that as a country?
Zainab, let me start by saying that the action by the president, the political class, to address the matters within IEBC this early is a good thing, because it gives the country a time, to put basically the commission, the commissioners, systems and structures in good time, so that this does not become an issue that we're doing very close to the elections. That's number one. Secondly, I would urge Kenyans, including politicians, to read that those recommendations by the IEBC, because if you look at all of them, and there are very many, they're very sensible. It is what we need. One of the things that pops out quite clearly, and Kenyans have been speaking about it, is staggering elections, for example. Yeah, that is something that we need to look at. Deployment of technology. Very, very early, 2 years before elections, so that we know what these things are. People are not ambushed last minute, all the way to printing of ballot and ballot papers. I think this is something very, very good. And definitely, even as we are thinking about putting the commissioners in place, getting the commission functioning, these very early, 4 years and a few months to elections, I think that's one thing that the country is getting right. The second point I wanted to make, and I'll be piggybacking on what my colleagues here, Omar and Kimosop, have articulated very well, and is a message to the political class. Really think about the state and the country of Kenya. I was having a conversation with a friend from the UK the other day, and he couldn't remember which party our president came from. In fact, he told me that, Alfred, you and the president belong to the same party. Is ODM, is that right? So I had to tell him, yeah, we used to. We used to be in the same party. And as Omar has really articulated that very well, we know that by the next elections, these politicians will have rearranged themselves totally. We know new parties will emerge. They will be, this we know for a fact.
But we still need solid structures.
Exactly. This will take to the bank that actually there will be new coalitions and all these sort of things. The bigger point I want to make is an appeal to the political class. Let us not make decisions based on parties that we're going to throw away like waste paper. Let us not make decisions on coalitions that will cease to exist immediately, regional interest shift. Let us actually make decisions that are good for us as a country, that are good for our people and so on. The parties will keep shifting.
All right.
Yeah, and that's the message really, that a lot of the things that have been highlighted here by IEBC are good for Kenya, and they're not partisan. Let us implement them, whether you lost elections or won, whether you are in Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, let us implement these because they're good for the country. And remember that most likely, if you're a politician outside there, you are going to be in a different political formation as things settle.
All right. So that's interesting. Okay, so let's wind up on that now. We're almost coming to the end of the show, but Vincent had preempted something. But just a quick comment from each of you. So the former CS Magoha has now been appointed the Professor of Surgery at Maseno. The former Education Cabinet Secretary is back in the lecture halls after joining Maseno University School of Medicine as a Professor of Surgery. This is going to be quite interesting, you know, that shift from a policy maker, you know, to back in the class as an academic. Vincent?
I think I celebrate Prof.
Right.
I commend him for that step. It's a statement. It's a statement that it's something that I would want to say be among the, if there was a list of those to be registered, I really want to commend him. I commend him for the following. One, it is his experience, his qualifications are important to be injected into our public institutions so that we can build the next generation.
Right.
When somebody
and this doesn't mean that once you've served within the public office.
No, so you know, one of the things we have to be careful is when we don't look at responsibilities and jobs as others being premium and better than the others.
Right.
So I think for me that is a very important thing. I will tell you, Zainab, if our president, being human, when he is ill, is seen to be admitted in Kenyatta, that will inject a lot of public confidence into our public institutions. In fact, if our public officers would be taking their children to public institutions, do you know what's going to happen? Our systems are going to improve. So for me, seeing Prof like that, seeing the experience, just imagine. Of course, you can see very clearly. Think about the networks that he takes back to that university, locally and globally. Think about the message of confidence to of course the most he was at the University of Nairobi previously. So by going to another university, it's also it is a plus. Actually, this is a golden opportunity to Maseno University. Think about that. Even the quality of the experience both in policy and also as a professional. So for me, it is something that Maseno should glean to the most in resource mobilization, in also attracting and becoming the global center that we would require for it to be. So it's something that other universities should take up, and I would want to really say that it would be good, for example, even for President Ruto, together with some of his cabinet colleagues, when they exit with their experiences they take them back to public institutions. Right. Because look, we had the former head of public service, Kinyua, retiring after serving 4 presidents. How much quality of experience if it was taken to an academic institution, just as a visiting lecturer, to share this is how public service work. You know, the governments exist in perpetuity. So for me, it is something that should be commended and something that is worth celebrating. And what a new year's gift to Maseno University. So congratulations, Maseno.
All right. Wakili, I don't know if you have something to add on that.
Yes, yes,
right.
yes. A professional dies only when he's physically dead. Professor Magoha, Professor Bitange Ndemo, after he left being a PL, my professor of law, Professor Githu Muigai, the former Attorney General, we are battling with him in court. It is about continuity of life. Dr. Ruto, once he finishes, he'll have to go back. Because that knowledge you have, it's normally taken to the universities. He's not going there for salaries. He's going back to enrich, to give back to the societies in Kenya. And this should be encouraged all over. Kibichu should go back to JKUAT, where he used to be a lecturer, and he gives that. Because the question of how do you get some of the skills and perspectives that you have had to the young generation. is going back to the university. If you did not have a master's to be employed to teach, you can still go as a visiting lecturer. You go and give perspectives. If you look at the model now being done at the Strathmore School of Law and other sectors at Strathmore, they are picking hands-on experts, career people from the media to be their visiting experts. Right. That way you impact the country. So I'm very happy that we have this, and we urge the Dr. Matiangis, the people like Musa Sheru to go back to the ICT. Let us tap this generation. Let us not get these people escaping to other countries when we have institutions in this country that they can't serve. And we expect the president, retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, to be going to public universities to give lectures.
All right. So
on his term. Thabo Mbeki did it very well. Tony Blair has done it very well. Hillary Clinton is doing it. She's doing it very well. Let us not retire and go to the village.
Not to retire the experience. Right?
The experience can never retire.
All right.
Yes. And the media has thanks for bringing this. We have a responsibility, I'm saying, in the media to be able to paint that future on, like, one of these days, just having a conversation even in these platforms on what brains, for example, do we have. Just look at the 22 cabinet secretaries. What Anyang' Nyong'o, when he was Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, when he was Senate, he was still at the university. Zaino, the Secretary General of former Secretary General of ODM, the senator from forgotten her name, was actually lecturing at the university. So one of the things we need to do, Zainab, as part of growing and speaking up this country is to have that discussions and see. It'd be great to have somebody, like, look at the former cabinet secretary Raphael Tuju was from the media. There is a lot of changes in the media to digital media. Some of his experiences could be important to shape generations, because there is enough space in the air for every bird to fly.
All right, thank you, Vincent. Prof, you have the last word on this.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to add to my colleagues that one is on the Kenyan Academy, but the other one is on these leaders. I kept telling people that, look here, I mean, as Professor, Magoha's primary qualification and competence is in the academy.
Right.
He's not an expert in education. True. There is nobody who's an expert in being a vice chancellor. We all just joined the university as professors, and then we are given some administrative work. Right. So I look at this as priesthood. I look at this as many things that we do in life based on our competence. Sometimes government calls you to take on other responsibilities. But the core responsibility, the priesthood of Magoha, is in the academy. It is not in government. And this is what should be happening. And as my colleagues have said, the academy should be open. And this is a message to the universities. The universities should be opened and should actually appreciate knowledge that has been constructed in practice, and enable this knowledge to seamlessly feed into the academic institutions. Of course, I'm adding people like William Mutunga, who went across to Kabarak. I'm very happy about Magoha. And yes, I make a lot of noises here, but when Professor Wainaina of Kenyatta University came, he called me and told me, Omenya, you are a professor of architecture. We want you here. So again, I'm a young professor of Kenyatta University. And this is starting to happen, and we are very happy about this. Actually, as at yesterday, the former CEO of Kenyatta University, Dr. Ngech, was actually offered an adjunct professorship at the University of Nairobi to teach based on the experience he had in running that hospital. So this is the direction, and this is a very positive direction. At this particular point, Vincent, Dunstan, I must say I'm very proud of my country.
All right. That's very good. I have won a conversation.
I think we really and thank you so much.
We are happy about this.
We appreciate all right, of course, thank you, Vincent Kimosop, governance expert, Professor Alfred Omenya, urban development expert, also governance analyst, and Dunstan Umari, lawyer, political analyst. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. We didn't have a chance to touch on the retired Archbishop Eliud Wabukala, who's also retired as the chairperson of the EACC. He's been there for 6 years. And this is where we end M Live. Thank you so much for watching. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. You don't want to miss that. My name is Zainab Ismail. Have yourself a good morning and good day.